The phone rang at 3:11 in the morning. 3 sharp vibrations against the wooden nightstand. 3 seconds that split the night in half. I opened my eyes before the second ring. A mother's instinct never sleeps. "Mom," a voice whispered on the other end, trembling, breathless. "It's Lily." My heart stopped for a moment. Lily never called this late. Never sounded like that. "Where are you?" I asked, sitting up, my hand already reaching for the lamp switch. "I'm at the hospital," she said, voice cracking. They wouldn't let me call before. "Mom, it's Daniel. He said I attacked him. They think I did it." The room seemed to tilt. My chest tightened as if the air had turned to glass. "What do you mean they think you did it?" She took a shaking breath. "He cut himself. He said I went crazy. They have photos. Mom, the police are here." Silence. Then a sound that shattered me, her muffled sob trying so hard to be quiet. "I didn't touch him," she whispered. "You have to believe me." I didn't realize I was already standing, barefoot on the cold floor, keys in hand, pulling on a coat that wasn't even mine. "I believe you," I said, my voice steady even as my hands trembled. "Which hospital?" "St. Andrews, downtown. I'm on my way." I didn't hang up. Neither did she. The line stayed open as I ran down the hall, through the empty house, out into the night that smelled of rain and sirens in the distance, the streets blurred beneath my tires. The city was asleep, but my mind was burning awake. Every red light was an insult. Every second was a lifetime. Lily's voice was faint now, almost like a child again. "Mom, there's a nurse here. She looks scared. She keeps looking at Daniel, like she knows something." "Stay where you are," I said. "Don't say anything. Don't sign anything." I pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed past Reason, but Reason had left hours ago. St. Andrew's Hospital sat like a ghost under the rain, its windows lit in patches, flickering yellow against the darkness. I didn't remember parking. I only remembered the doors, automatic, sterile, opening like a judgment. The smell of antiseptic hit me first, then the sound. Low voices, the hum of machines, the quiet weeping of someone down the hall. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Ma'am, visiting hours?" "I'm here for Lily Carter," I said. "My daughter." Something in my tone made her freeze. She glanced at a screen, then at a hallway to her right. "Room 12, but the police—" "I know," I interrupted. "I'll handle them." My shoes echoed on the linoleum as I walked down the hall. Every step felt like a verdict I was about to rewrite. At the door marked 12, 2 officers stood guard. One of them, young, nervous, shifted when he saw me. The other just watched, unreadable. "I'm her mother," I said, meeting his eyes. "Mrs. Carter," the older one said carefully. "Your daughter's being questioned in connection to an assault. Her husband came in with a stab wound. Superficial." I cut him off. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "Superficial," I repeated. "On the arm, maybe the shoulder. A wound that bleeds enough for sympathy, but not enough for danger." His silence was confirmation. "I used to prosecute men like him," I said. "You think I don't know the playbook?" He opened his mouth, but I was already past him. Lily sat on the hospital bed, arms folded around herself, her face pale and swollen. Her wrists had faint red marks, like bracelets made of pain. When she saw me, her eyes filled instantly. "Mom," I crossed the room in 2 steps and held her. The tremor in her body told me everything I needed to know. "I didn't do it," she whispered against my shoulder. He was yelling. I tried to leave. He blocked the door. I pushed him and he— Her breath hitched. He smashed the glass table and said it was me. I pulled back enough to look at her face. "Where's Daniel now?" "In the waiting room. He told them I'm unstable. He told them I've been violent before." A chill crept through me. Not from fear, but recognition. I had heard those exact words too many times. Every abuser's script was written the same way. A knock on the door broke the silence. A man in a dark suit stepped in. Mid-40s, confident, holding a clipboard like a weapon. "I'm Detective Hollis," he said. "Mrs. Carter, I assume?" I nodded. "Your daughter's husband made serious allegations," he continued. "He says she tried to stab him during an argument." "We're just following procedure." "Procedure," I repeated softly, the word sour on my tongue. "Tell me, Detective, does your procedure include checking her injuries too? Or do we only photograph the men?" His jaw tightened. "We're doing our job, ma'am." "No," I said. "You're following a story." He stared at me for a long second, then turned to Lily. "Ma'am, if you'd like to make a statement—" "She will," I interrupted. After her lawyer arrives. He hesitated. Do you have legal representation? I smiled faintly. You're looking at it. For the first time, he seemed unsure. You're an attorney? Used to be. I met his eyes. Now I'm a mother. Which means I'm twice as dangerous. When he left, I turned back to Lily. You need to tell me everything. From the start, she nodded weakly. It started small, she said. Comments, little insults, then the control. The tracking apps, the questions about where I was, who I talked to. He said it was love. He said he just wanted to protect me. Her voice trembled as she went on. 2 months ago, he hit me for the first time. Said it was my fault for making him angry. I almost left, but he begged, cried, promised therapy. He even bought me flowers. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room. I started recording things after that. I kept them hidden. On my old phone. Where's that phone now? I asked. At the apartment. Locked? She nodded. In the bottom drawer. Behind the books? Good. Evidence. A small island of power in an ocean of manipulation. I took her hand. We'll get it. In the waiting room, Daniel sat like a man on trial who knew the jury already loved him. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his left arm bandaged, his expression rehearsed. When he saw me, he smiled. That smile, the one that said he still thought he was in control. Mrs. Carter, he greeted smoothly. I didn't expect to see you tonight. People rarely expect me, I said. He gestured to his arm. It's unfortunate what happened. Lily's been unstable lately. Stress, maybe. I've tried to help her. I studied him. The subtle self-pity, the casual tone, the way he made himself sound noble even as he spun the knife. You're very calm for a man who claims his wife tried to kill him, I said. He chuckled softly. Because I know the truth always comes out. It does, I agreed, leaning closer. And you should be afraid of that. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not guilt, not yet, but fear of being seen. I turned away before he could speak again. I'd seen enough. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was still heavy, but the first light of dawn was pushing through. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Mark, it's Evelyn Carter. A pause. Then, Evelyn, it's been a long time. I need a warrant, I said, unofficially. There's evidence at my daughter's apartment. Recordings. Her husband's been staging abuse reports. Another pause. Then a sigh. You still know how to start a fire, don't you? I don't start fires, I said quietly. I expose the ones men think they can hide. The evidence drawer. The time the sun began to bleed orange through the clouds, I was already driving toward Lily's apartment. The city was waking up, but my mind was still stuck in the quiet, sterile hum of that hospital room. Every red light, every turn, every raindrop that hit the windshield. All of it replayed her voice. He said I attacked him. They think I did it. The streets blurred. But my purpose didn't. Lily's apartment sat on the 3rd floor of an aging building. Cracked walls, a rusted mailbox, the smell of damp carpet, and regret. The kind of place where neighbors hear everything but pretend they don't. I had her spare key. She gave it to me last year, when love still blinded her and she thought Daniel was her forever. The lock turned easily. The door creaked open like a secret being told. Inside, the air was heavy. Stale perfume, cigarette smoke, and something else. Control. You could smell it in the order of things. The couch cushions were perfectly aligned. Shoes neatly paired. Not a speck of dust on the glass table. Except for one thing, a small crack near the corner. The same table she said he'd smashed. Blood still faintly stained the floor near it. A dark shadow against the wood. I walked deeper. Her art supplies were tucked away in a box. Her books stacked like she'd stopped halfway through cleaning. And in the corner of the bedroom, a photo frame. Lily and Daniel smiling, his hand gripping her waist a little too tightly. I turned the frame down. The drawer. It was exactly where she said. Bottom drawer of the dresser, beneath a stack of scarves. I pulled it open slowly. There it was. An old phone. Cracked screen. Battery bloated. Forgotten, but alive. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Of course. No charge. I found a charger tangled behind the nightstand and plugged it in. The faint glow of a charging icon appeared, like a pulse returning to a body. While it booted, I scanned the room again. Something didn't fit. The bedspread was folded too neatly. The closet door slightly ajar, and inside, men's shirts still hanging, pressed, arranged by color. He hadn't even packed to leave, because he thought he wouldn't need to. The phone finally unlocked after 3 failed attempts and 1 lucky guess. Gallery, voice memos. There were dozens. Labeled by date. Some as old as a year. I pressed play on one. Recording March 12th, 2:43 a.m. Daniel. Who were you talking to? Lily. It was my mother. Daniel. Don't lie to me. Sound of something breaking. Lily. Stop! You're hurting me! Daniel. If you just listened, I wouldn't have to. I froze. Even after years in courtrooms, after hundreds of cases, hearing it from my own daughter's voice was different. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was pain carved into digital memory. Another file. Recording April 9th, 9:15 p.m. Daniel. You think you can embarrass me in front of my friends? Lily. I didn't. Daniel. You smiled too much. They'll think you're flirting. Lily. I was just being polite. Daniel. You don't talk unless I tell you to. Click. Silence. Then another. Each one was a blade. Each one a confession he didn't know he'd made. I transferred the recordings to my own phone, every file neatly labeled, time-stamped, secured. Then I noticed something in the corner. A small camcorder, dusty but functional, half hidden under the bed. When I turned it on, the last saved video played automatically. The frame shook. It was nighttime. The living room? Lily's voice came first, soft, pleading. Daniel, stop, please. Then his calm, almost gentle. I just want to talk. A pause. Then a crash. Glass, her scream. And his voice again, chillingly smooth. Look what you made me do. The timestamp? Last night, I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was the truth. Raw, undeniable. I ejected the memory card and slipped it into my pocket. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Down the hall, slow, heavy, familiar. The kind that didn't belong to a neighbor. I turned off the light. The doorknob. Rattled, then a voice. Him! Evelyn? I know you're in there. He pushed the door open halfway. His silhouette filled the frame. Calm, confident, the mask still on. What are you doing in our home? He asked, voice too polite. I stayed silent. My pulse roared in my ears. He stepped closer. You think you can take her side without knowing the full story? She's sick, Evelyn. She needs help. I've been trying to save her. I almost laughed. The same act he used on police, friends, neighbors. The savior mask, but I'd seen the real man behind it. Save yourself the speech, I said finally, stepping into the dim light. Because this time, you recorded your own downfall. His jaw clenched. What do you mean? I lifted the camcorder. The memory card slot open, empty. For the first time, his mask cracked. You broke into my house, he said, taking a step closer. I came for my daughter, I said. And the truth. He moved faster than I expected. Grabbed my wrist, the same grip he'd used on her. Give it back, he hissed. I looked him dead in the eye. Do it. Add assault to your list. He froze, because for the first time he realized I wasn't afraid of him. I twisted my wrist free and stepped back. If you think I came unprepared, I said quietly, check the red light on your window. He turned instinctively. A small red dot blinked from across the street. My old colleague Mark sat in a parked car. Camera aimed, Daniel's face drained of color. You're done, I said simply. Then I walked out. Back at the hospital, Detective Hollis was waiting near the nurse's station, coffee in hand. He looked tired, suspicious. I handed him the memory card. Everything you need, I said. He frowned. What's this? Proof, I said. And you're going to want to play it before you file your report. He hesitated, then gestured to a nearby office. We stepped inside. He inserted the card into his laptop. The video played. The sound of shattering glass filled the room. Lily's scream. Daniel's calm, manipulative tone. Then silence. When it ended, Hollis exhaled slowly. Jesus, he muttered. We almost arrested the victim, I finished for him. He nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. I'll take it from here, he said. We'll bring him in properly. For once, I said. Make sure the cuffs go on the right wrists. 2 hours later, I stood outside Lily's room. She was asleep finally. The morning sun spilled through the blinds, soft and gold, touching her face like a blessing. For the first time in months, her breathing sounded peaceful. The nurse approached quietly. They said her husband's been taken into custody, she whispered. Self-inflicted wounds, he admitted, trying to frame her. I nodded. It's over. The nurse smiled sadly. No, but it's beginning. She was right. Healing isn't the end of a story. It's the start of a new one. I sat by Lily's bed and took her hand gently. You're safe now, I whispered. And he'll never touch you again. Her eyes fluttered open, barely awake. You got the truth? I did, I said softly, and the world's going to hear it. A faint smile touched her lips. Thank you, Mom. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. No, sweetheart. Thank you for surviving long enough to fight back. It was strange how quiet the world becomes once the storm begins to pass. No thunder, no shouting, just the distant hum of life moving on, while yours stands still, waiting for justice to catch up. For days, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that video. His hand, her scream, the way he said, "Look what you made me do." Now those words echoed in the walls of a courtroom. The trial had begun. The state versus Daniel Mercer. The same building where I'd once delivered justice now felt colder, heavier. Funny, I'd spent years teaching young attorneys how to see truth behind polished lies. But now, as I sat in the front row watching the man who almost destroyed my daughter sit in a neatly pressed suit, I realized justice isn't blind. It's just slow. The prosecutor, Elaine Carter, was sharp, young, relentless, and the only one I trusted with this case. Her tone cut like glass as she stood before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what you will see in this courtroom is not love. It is control. It is fear. It is the slow erasure of a woman's voice by a man who claimed to care for her. Daniel watched her, unbothered, his hair perfectly combed, his posture confident. The same man who once whispered threats now wore a mask of calm innocence. He turned once, meeting my eyes, smiled, the kind of smile that said, "You'll never win." I didn't flinch, because this time I had something stronger than fear. Evidence. When Lily took the stand, the courtroom went silent. She was pale, fragile, but her voice, steady. Elaine guided her gently through the questions. Can you tell the court what happened on the night of June 14th? Lily's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. He was angry. I don't even remember what started it. Maybe a message on my phone. He grabbed me. I tried to leave. Then what happened? Her eyes glistened, but she didn't break. He said if I screamed, no one would believe me. He said I'd ruin his life. And mine. A hush fell over the room. Elaine played the video next. The screen flickered. The image of their living room filled the courtroom. And then, that voice again. Calm. Manipulative. Look what you made me do. Lily covered her face. I reached out instinctively, fingers tightening around the seat. When the video ended, the room felt frozen in place. Even the judge seemed speechless. Then came Daniel's turn. His lawyer stood, tall, smooth, voice dripping with confidence. Your Honor, this video shows a heated argument, yes, but not a crime. My client never denied they had fights. What marriage doesn't? He smiled toward the jury. We will prove that Ms. Lily Mercer suffers from emotional instability. That she exaggerated events, or worse, set him up. Classic defense. Blame the victim. Rewrite the truth. But this time, truth had a voice. Elaine stood again. You will hear recordings taken months before that night. You will hear his words, not hers. And she pressed play. The audio filled the courtroom. His voice, his rage, his threats. No amount of smooth talk could wash that away. The days turned into weeks. Experts testified, neighbors, doctors. Each story added another piece to the puzzle, until the image of Daniel Mercer, the loving husband, shattered completely. Still, he held his composure, smiling, taking notes, whispering to his attorney, like he still believed he could win. But I'd seen men like him before. They never fought for innocence, only for control. On the 9th day of the trial, the defense called their surprise witness. Your Honor, the defense calls Judge Evelyn Hart. The room gasped. Me. I stood slowly, heart pounding. Elaine's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. I took the oath, every word heavy with irony. The defense lawyer smiled. Judge Hart, you were once one of the most respected voices in this city's judicial system. Tell us, in your professional opinion, is it possible that your daughter misunderstood her husband's actions? I looked him dead in the eye. No, he blinked. Excuse me? I said no. What she described, what you just heard, that's not misunderstanding. That's abuse. I've seen it too many times to call it anything else. He shifted uncomfortably. But you're her mother. Surely your emotions... My emotions don't change the evidence, I cut in. But maybe yours are blinding you from seeing it, the gallery murmured. He tried again. You seem angry, Judge Hart. I am, I said firmly. At a system that teaches women to stay quiet. At men who hide behind words like love while breaking bones and spirits, the judge banged her gavel. Ms. Hart, please. Apologies, Your Honor, I said softly, eyes still on Daniel. But silence is what almost killed my daughter. I won't make that mistake again. After I stepped down, Daniel's mask began to crack. He whispered something to his lawyer, jaw tight, eyes cold. The next morning, rumors spread. He wanted to testify. Elaine smirked when she told me, he's going to talk. Big mistake. When he took the stand, the courtroom was electric. He started calm, collected. I never hurt her intentionally. Sometimes people exaggerate things when emotions run high.
Elaine let him talk. Rope enough to hang himself. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Mr. Mercer, if you loved your wife as you claim, why record her? He blinked. What? The audio files found on her phone. Each one recorded by your device, according to metadata. Why were you recording her? He hesitated. Just to prove she was unstable, he said finally. The courtroom fell silent. Elaine's voice was ice. So you admit it. You recorded her without consent? To manipulate how others saw her. He realized too late what he'd said. His lawyer buried his face in his hands. By the time closing arguments came, there was nothing left to defend. Elaine's final words echoed in the chamber. Power doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles, but today that smile fades because the truth doesn't belong to him anymore.
The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, no one breathed. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find the defendant. Guilty. A wave of silence. Then, quiet tears. Lily gripped my hand so tightly I thought she'd never let go. Daniel sat frozen. No rage, no denial. Just disbelief. Like the world had finally refused to bend for him. The bailiff took him away. The cuffs clicked. And for the first time in years, justice didn't feel like a word. It felt like freedom. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but all I could hear was Lily's voice whispering, "It's over." I turned to her and said, "No, my love. It's finally beginning. Because survival isn't the end. It's the start of rebuilding what was broken. Piece by piece, truth by truth." And as we walked down those courthouse steps, the wind felt lighter, the world brighter. And for the first time since that night, we weren't running from pain. We were walking toward peace. Part 4. After the verdict, the courtroom emptied long before the echoes of the verdict faded. But for me, the sound of that single word, guilty, kept ringing in my ears like a heartbeat I'd forgotten I had. For years, I'd watched justice being handed out like a cold transaction. One more case, one more ruling. But this time it wasn't law that won. It was truth, and truth is heavier than any sentence. When the reporters finally left, the corridors of the courthouse grew quiet. Lily and I stood in the same hallway where months ago she'd walked in wearing bruises and disbelief. Now, she walked out with a small, fragile smile. Outside, the rain had started again. Soft, cleansing, the kind that makes the world look new for a few minutes before reality dries it away. She tilted her face toward the sky, letting the drops hit her skin. "I used to hate the rain," she whispered. It reminded me of him, the way it sounded when he'd yell. I looked at her, eyes soft. "Then let it remind you of this day instead." She smiled faintly. The day I stopped being afraid. We sat in the car for a long time before driving home. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to explain. The city outside the window blurred into streaks of color. Traffic lights, wet streets, people holding umbrellas, moving on with their lives, and for the first time so were we. Home wasn't the same. The walls still carried echoes, memories that didn't leave just because he did. But healing isn't about forgetting. It's about reclaiming what was taken. The first thing Lily did when she came home was open the windows. For months, they'd been locked shut. He'd hated fresh air, said it made the place too cold. Now, the wind rushed in like freedom itself. She walked to the kitchen, ran her hand across the counter, then turned to me. "I want to paint again," she said quietly. I nodded. "Then paint." Days turned into weeks. The news cycle moved on. The cameras disappeared. But inside our small world, something sacred was happening. Recovery. It didn't come easy. Some nights she woke up screaming. Some mornings she couldn't get out of bed. But she tried. Every single day, I'd find her in the living room, brush in hand, painting the sunrise. Always the same colors: orange, gold, and faint pink. Why always this? I asked once. She smiled softly. Because I need to remind myself that light still exists. Meanwhile, Daniel's sentencing approached. He tried to appeal, of course. Men like him always do. Claimed he was framed, that evidence was manipulated. But the recordings, the video, the bruises, they told a story no words could undo. When the final hearing came, the judge read the sentence calmly. For the crimes of aggravated assault, coercive control, and attempted murder, 22 years without parole. Daniel didn't look at us. He just stared forward, expression empty, as if the world he built finally stopped believing his lies. When they took him away, I didn't feel triumph, just silence. A silence that wasn't empty, it was peaceful. Afterward, the prosecutor, Elaine, met us outside the courthouse. She hugged Lily tightly. "You were the strongest witness I've ever seen," she said. "You didn't just testify, you taught," Lily smiled faintly. "What did I teach?" "That courage doesn't mean you're never afraid," Elaine said. "It means you speak anyway." Months passed. The scars faded slowly, but the memories, they stayed. We began volunteering at a local shelter. Women, children, survivors. Faces that carried the same story in different words. Lily spoke there sometimes, not as a victim, but as proof that you can rebuild from ashes. "I used to think silence kept me safe," she told them once. But silence was just another cage. The moment I spoke, even if my voice shook, I was free. Every woman in the room cried that night, and so did I. One evening, she came home holding a small notebook, leather-bound, worn at the edges. "What's that?" I asked. She smiled. "My book." "Book?" I started writing everything. The pain, the fear, the trial, all of it. "Maybe if I turn it into words, it'll stop living inside me." She looked at me. "Do you think anyone will want to read it?" I reached over, touched her hand. "Someone will. Because someone out there is still living your yesterday. And they need to know there's a tomorrow." By the time spring came, she had a title, The Trial of Silence, the same words I'd once whispered to her. Now immortalized in ink, she painted the cover herself, a single open window, light spilling in. I kept a copy on my nightstand, not because I needed to remember the pain, but because it reminded me that survival is the greatest verdict of all. On the anniversary of the trial, we visited her father's grave. He'd passed years before all of this. Cancer, gone quietly in his sleep. Lily placed a single white lily on the headstone. "He always said I was stronger than I thought," she murmured. I smiled. He was right. She looked at me then, her eyes clear, her voice steady. "I'm not afraid anymore, Mom." And in that moment, I knew. She wasn't just free from him. She was free from the part of herself that still believed she was broken. As we walked away, the sky began to rain again, soft, cleansing, endless, and for the first time, we didn't run for cover, we walked through it, laughing, alive. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come with thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, like rain washing away what the storm left behind. Part 5. The light returns. It had been 1 year. 1 year since the night everything broke. And everything began again. 1 year since the sirens, the fear, the courtroom, the verdict. A year since Lily's voice finally stopped trembling. And in that time, something miraculous happened. She learned to live again, to breathe without flinching, to exist without permission. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. Lily stood by the window of her small apartment, her own apartment, sipping coffee, watching the city below wake up. Boxes of books lined the wall. Canvas paintings leaned against the furniture. There was color again. Real color. On the walls, in her clothes, in her life. On the table lay a small envelope. The letterhead read, "New York Press, author appearance schedule." She smiled faintly. Tonight was her first book reading. Her story, The Trial of Silence, had become more than just therapy. It had become a movement. At 6 p.m., the bookstore was full. Dozens of people, women, men, students, survivors, packed the small room. Cameras clicked softly, but there was no chaos. Just a quiet reverence, the kind people have when they're in the presence of truth. Lily walked to the podium. Her hair was shorter now, her voice stronger, but her eyes, those same gentle, wounded eyes, still carried stories beyond words. She adjusted the mic, took a breath, and began to read. There's a moment in every survivor's life when silence stops feeling safe. When you realize that hiding isn't healing, and when you finally speak, the world may not believe you, but your soul finally does. Her voice didn't tremble once. I stood at the back of the room, watching. Every word she read was a wound healing in real time. When she finished, the crowd rose to its feet. Applause. Long, powerful, endless. Some people were crying. Others just stood silently, heads bowed as if honoring something sacred. Lily stepped away from the mic and found me in the crowd. Our eyes met, and for a second, I saw her as a child again. The little girl who used to paint the sun on every page because she believed it could never stop shining. She walked toward me. I opened my arms. We hugged, long, wordless, full of everything we never said. I did it, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. I smiled. No, you lived. After the reading, a young woman approached us. She couldn't have been more than 20. There was a bruise on her wrist, faint but there. Her hands trembled as she spoke. Ms. Hayes, your book, it gave me courage. I left him last week. Her voice cracked. I thought no one would believe me. But then I read your story, and I did it. I walked out. Lily's eyes filled. She took the girl's hands. You're not alone, she said softly. You never were. You just needed someone to remind you. The girl nodded, tears streaming. And in that instant, I realized this was bigger than justice. Lily hadn't just survived. She had become a lifeline for others. Months later, she was invited to speak at a global conference on domestic violence reform. Governments, judges, social workers, people with power, finally listened to voices like hers. She stood on the stage, lights bright, cameras flashing, and said, "We don't need pity. We need protection. We don't need sympathy. We need systems that believe us the first time." Every line drew thunderous applause, and somewhere in the crowd, I felt proud in a way I never had in all my years as a lawyer, as a mother, as a woman, because the daughter who once whispered in fear now spoke for thousands. After the event, she and I sat outside the hall under a quiet sky. The city glowed beneath us. Skyscrapers like stars turned upside down. She leaned back against the bench. I keep thinking, she said softly, maybe all of this happened for a reason. Maybe I was meant to go through it, so I could help others find their way out. I looked at her, eyes glistening. Pain doesn't define purpose, I said, but sometimes it reveals it, she smiled. Then maybe this is mine. That night, back at her apartment, she opened her window again. The wind carried the faint scent of rain. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled, not angry, just distant, like a memory fading. She looked out, her reflection framed in glass. For a moment, she saw her past, the nights of fear, the bruises, the silence. Then she blinked, and it was gone. In its place stood a woman unbroken, unafraid and unstoppable. She sat at her desk, turned on her lamp, and began typing her next book. Title, The Sound of Freedom. The first line read, "The night I chose to speak was the night I started to live." She paused, smiled, and looked out the window one last time. The city lights flickered like constellations, proof that even in the darkest sky, something always shines back. And as I watched her from the doorway, I realized something profound. This wasn't just Lily's story anymore. It was every woman's story, every survivor's heartbeat, every voice that was once silenced but learned to rise again. Because the truth is, healing isn't loud. It's quiet. It's steady. It's the sound of a woman breathing freely for the first time in years. And that sound is the purest form of freedom there is.